Nelson screamed. It was not the shout of a strong billionaire. It was the cry of a man who had just lost control. His arm was twisted behind his back, locked tight like a door that would not open. His knees shook. His mouth opened, but the words came out, broken and weak. "Lydia, stop." Lydia did not answer. She stood firm in the middle of the living room, one hand still holding his wrist, her face calm, her pregnant belly rising and falling as she breathed. The soft music from the club playlist was still playing in the background. Justina stood frozen near the couch, her eyes wide, her lips shaking. No one in that room understood what was happening, especially Nelson, because the woman he had just slapped, the woman he had mocked, the woman he had called weak and ugly, was moving like someone trained. And just as Lydia shifted her foot slightly, tightening her grip, the front door creaked. Someone was about to walk in. Earlier that same day, Lydia had woken up before sunrise. She lay on the large bed in their Lecky home, staring at the ceiling. Nelson's side of the bed was empty again. It had been like that many Saturdays. She did not need to ask where he was. She already knew. She slowly sat up, placing a hand on her belly. "Easy," she whispered to herself. The house was quiet, but her mind was loud. Lydia had once believed her marriage was a blessing. Nelson Anderson was admired across Lagos. A young billionaire. Clean suits. Big deals. A face that appeared on business magazines. People called her lucky. They did not see what she saw. At first, it was small things. Late nights. Short replies. His phone always face down. When it rang at strange hours, he would step outside to answer. One night, Lydia had asked gently, "Who keeps calling so late?" Nelson did not look at her. "My cousin. He lives abroad." She believed him. She wanted peace, but peace never stayed long. Justina entered their lives quietly. She was Nelson's secretary, polite, smart, always smiling too much. Lydia noticed how Nelson's voice changed when he spoke about her. "Justina handled the files well today," he would say. "Justina stayed back to help me. Justina understands my pressure." Lydia swallowed her worries. Until the night everything cracked. Nelson had left his phone on the dining table. It vibrated. Lydia did not mean to check it. She only glanced at the screen. The message glowed clearly. "Where will we lodge tonight? I can make the reservations." Lydia's heart dropped. The number was saved as Jacob, UK. When Nelson returned, Lydia showed him the phone with shaking hands. "You said this was your cousin." Nelson's face changed. In one fast move, his hand flew. The slap landed hard. "Do not touch my phone again," he warned, "or ask questions that do not concern you." That was the day Lydia learned silence could still hurt. Weeks later, the insults started. "Look at you," Nelson said one evening. "Always tired. Always heavy." She was pregnant. 7 months along. One day, Lydia called Nelson's mother, Mrs. Anderson. She cried quietly and explained everything. There was a long pause on the line. Then the woman said coldly, "If my son brings another woman home, it is his choice." That weekend, Justina came. She walked into the house like she belonged there. Her heels clicked loudly. Her dress hugged her body. Nelson did not stop her. They laughed. They drank. They mocked. "Pregnancy has ruined her," Justina said once, not even lowering her voice. Mrs. Anderson laughed on the phone. Lydia stood in the hallway, feeling small. Saturday nights became a nightmare. Nelson and Justina would return from clubbing, smelling of perfume and alcohol, holding each other openly. Lydia would stay in the bedroom, her heart beating fast, hoping the night would pass quickly. But that night was different. That Saturday, Lydia was in the living room, arranging baby clothes. The door opened. Loud laughter filled the house. Nelson walked in with Justina wrapped around him. They were kissing, careless and bold. Nelson's jacket was half off. Justina's hands were on his chest. They did not see Lydia at first. When they did, Nelson did not stop. Justina smiled. "Oh," she said, "you are still awake." Lydia stood slowly. "Nelson," she said, her voice shaking. "Who is this?" Nelson turned, annoyed. "Are you blind?" he snapped. "Go to your room." "This is my home," Lydia said softly. "And I am your wife." Nelson raised his hand again. The slap echoed through the room. Something changed in Lydia's eyes. Nelson did not see fear this time. He saw focus. Before he could step back, Lydia caught his wrist. In one smooth move, she turned his arm and locked it behind him. Nelson screamed. Justina shouted. "Let him go," Justina cried. Lydia did not look at her. Nelson struggled, but the more he fought, the tighter the hold became. How are you doing this?" he gasped. Lydia leaned closer and whispered calmly, "You never asked who I was before you met me." Justina's phone fell from her hand, and just then, the front door creaked open. Footsteps stepped inside. A familiar voice called out, "Lydia?" Lydia's grip tightened. Nelson's scream grew louder, and the person walking in froze at the sight before them. The man at the door did not move. His name was Emmanuel Anderson, Nelson's younger brother. He had come unannounced from Ikeja to return some documents Nelson had forgotten at the office. He expected noise, maybe laughter, maybe another careless party. He did not expect this. Nelson was bent forward, his face twisted in pain. Lydia stood behind him, one hand holding his arm in a firm lock. Her face was calm, almost cold. Justina stood near the couch, shaking, her mouth open but silent. For 3 full seconds, no one spoke. "Lydia?" Emmanuel said again, confused. "What is going on?" Nelson struggled. "Emmanuel, tell her to stop. She wants to break my arm." Lydia did not release him. Instead, she spoke clearly. "Close the door." Emmanuel hesitated. "What?" "Close it," she repeated, her voice steady. Something in her tone made Emmanuel obey without thinking. He shut the door slowly and turned back. Justina found her voice. "This woman is mad," she cried. She attacked him. Lydia finally spoke to her. "Be quiet." Justina froze. Nelson was breathing hard now. "Lydia, you will regret this," he hissed. "Do you know who I am?" Lydia leaned closer to his ear. "I know exactly who you are." She loosened her grip just enough for him to breathe, but not enough to escape. Then she guided him forward and pushed him onto the couch. He fell heavily, shocked. Emmanuel rushed forward. "Lydia, please, sit," Lydia said to Emmanuel. He stopped. She turned to Justina. "You came into my home every weekend. You laughed at me. You insulted my child." Justina tried to speak, but her voice broke. I did not know." "You knew," Lydia said simply. Nelson stood up slowly, rubbing his arm. His eyes were filled with anger and fear, mixed together. "You think you are strong now," he said. "You are pregnant. Do not forget that." Lydia smiled faintly. "That is why I held back." The room went quiet. Emmanuel stared at her. Held back from what? Lydia walked to the center of the room. She straightened her shoulders. "I am Lydia Okafor," she said. "Daughter of Chief Okafor of Badagry." Nelson laughed loudly. "So? Is that supposed to scare me?" Lydia looked at him. "My father trained me before I ever came to Lagos. He did not train me for fights. He trained me for survival." She lifted her foot slightly, demonstrating balance. Her movement was light, controlled. "I am a kung fu master." Justina gasped. Emmanuel's eyes widened. Nelson shook his head. "You are lying." Lydia stepped forward suddenly. In one fast move, she knocked a glass off the table with her elbow. It shattered. Nelson flinched. "I could have broken your arm," she said calmly. "I chose not to." Emmanuel swallowed. "Nelson, what have you done?" Nelson's pride snapped. "She is acting." "You think I am afraid of tricks?" He moved toward her. Lydia raised one hand. "Do not," she warned. Nelson ignored her. In a blink, Lydia twisted sideways, tapped his knee, and pushed his shoulder. Nelson lost balance and crashed back onto the couch again. Breath knocked out of him. Justina screamed. Emmanuel stepped back. Lydia did not smile. "This is not a show. This is the last warning." She turned to Emmanuel. "You came at the wrong time, but maybe the right moment." Nelson coughed. "You humiliated me in my own house." "You humiliated me first," Lydia replied. "Every weekend, every insult, every lie." Justina shook her head violently. "Nelson, I did not sign up for this. This woman is dangerous." Lydia looked at Justina slowly. "You stayed when you should have left." She then placed her hand on her belly. "This child has heard enough." Silence filled the room. Then Lydia spoke again, softer now. There are things you do not know about me. About my past. About why I stayed quiet. She turned toward the hallway. But tonight is not for explanations. Nelson watched her walk away, his chest rising fast. As Lydia reached the stairs, she paused. One more thing, she said without turning. If you touch me again, I will not hold back. She disappeared upstairs. Justina grabbed her bag. I am leaving, she whispered. Emmanuel stood still, staring at the staircase. Nelson clenched his fists. And somewhere upstairs, Lydia locked her door, closed her eyes, and whispered, "This has only just begun." Lydia did not sleep that night. She sat on the edge of the bed, her back straight, one hand on her belly, the other resting on her knee. The house was quiet, but the silence felt heavy, like it was watching her. Downstairs, Nelson paced the living room, his arm still hurt. Not just the pain, but the shame. Emmanuel had tried to talk to him after Lydia went upstairs. "You have gone too far," Emmanuel had said. "This is not normal." Nelson snapped back. "Do not take her side." But Emmanuel did not argue again. He picked up his car keys and left without another word. Now Nelson was alone with his thoughts and his anger. "How dare she?" he muttered. "In my own house." He poured himself a drink, but did not taste it. His mind replayed the moment again and again. Lydia's calm face, her strength, the fear in Justina's eyes. Justina. She had rushed out of the house that night, shaking, calling him again and again afterward. He did not answer. For the first time, Nelson felt unsure. Upstairs, Lydia finally stood up. She walked to the mirror and looked at herself. Her face looked older, stronger. Her eyes were no longer soft. She remembered her father's voice clearly. Never fight in anger. Fight only when you must. She had broken that rule, but she did not regret it. A knock came on her door. Her body stiffened. "Yes?" she asked. It was Nelson. "Open the door," he said quietly. Lydia did not move. "I said open the door," he repeated, louder this time. She took a breath and unlocked it. Nelson stood there, his face hard, his jaw tight. "You embarrassed me," he said. "You embarrassed yourself," Lydia replied. His eyes narrowed. "You think because you know some tricks, you can challenge me." "I did not challenge you," Lydia said calmly. "You forced me." Nelson laughed coldly. "Do you know how Lagos works? Power decides truth." Lydia met his eyes. "Then you should be careful how you use yours." That made him pause. "You will not touch that woman again," Lydia continued. "She will not step into this house again." Nelson leaned closer. "You do not give me rules." Lydia did not step back. "Then we will keep clashing." For a moment, Nelson looked like he might hit her again. Then he smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. "Very well," he said. "Let us see who gets tired first." He turned and walked away. The next morning, Lydia woke up to messages on her phone. Unknown numbers. "You are an ungrateful woman. Do not forget who your husband is. You should know your place." Her chest tightened. Downstairs, Nelson was already dressed in a sharp suit. "You are leaving early," Lydia said. "I have work," he replied, without looking at her. He paused at the door. "By the way, my mother is coming today." Lydia's heart skipped. "For what?" she asked. Nelson smiled again. "To settle things." Hours later, Mrs. Anderson arrived. She walked in like a queen, her face tight, her eyes sharp. "So this is the woman causing trouble," she said, looking Lydia up and down. Lydia greeted her politely. "Good afternoon, Ma." Mrs. Anderson laughed. "Do not pretend. I heard everything." She turned to Nelson. "You married a strange one." Lydia stood still as insults flew. "Pregnancy has made you proud," Mrs. Anderson said. "You even attacked my son." "I defended myself," Lydia replied softly. Mrs. Anderson scoffed. "From what? A slap?" Nelson watched quietly. Then Mrs. Anderson said something that cut deep. "If not for this child, you would already be gone." Lydia's hand moved to her belly. Something inside her snapped again. She looked at Nelson. "You let this happen." Nelson shrugged. "You brought it on yourself." Mrs. Anderson leaned forward. "Pack your things. You will leave this house today." The room spun. Lydia's ears rang. Then she straightened her back. "I am not leaving," she said. Mrs. Anderson laughed loudly. And who will stop us? Lydia looked from mother to son. Then she slowly rolled up her sleeve. Try me, she said. Nelson's smile vanished, and at that exact moment, the front gate opened outside. A familiar voice called from the compound, Lydia. Her eyes widened. She knew that voice, and Nelson froze. Nelson's heart skipped. Mrs. Anderson turned sharply. Who is that? Lydia did not answer. She walked toward the window and looked down into the compound. A black SUV had stopped near the gate. The driver had stepped out already. He stood tall, calm, dressed simply in a neat shirt and trousers. Jacob Okafor, her younger brother. Nelson felt his mouth go dry. He had heard that name before. Not from Lydia. From whispers. From quiet business circles. From men who spoke carefully when the Okafor name came up. Mrs. Anderson frowned. Lydia, who is shouting your name in my son's house? Lydia turned around slowly. My family. Before anyone could stop her, she walked downstairs and opened the front door. Jacob stepped inside and froze when he saw her face. Lydia, he said softly. I felt something was wrong. She smiled faintly. You came at the right time. Jacob's eyes moved to Nelson, then to Mrs. Anderson. What is going on here? He asked calmly. Mrs. Anderson straightened her wrapper. Young man, this is a family matter. Jacob nodded politely. Yes, ma. That is why I am here. Nelson tried to laugh. Jacob, this is unnecessary. Lydia is being dramatic. Jacob looked at him closely. Did you touch my sister? Silence. Nelson did not answer. Jacob took one slow step forward. I asked you a simple question. Mrs. Anderson cut in quickly. She attacked my son. Jacob turned to Lydia. Is that true? Lydia shook her head. I defended myself. Jacob exhaled slowly. I warned you, he said to Nelson. Before the wedding. Nelson's eyes widened. Warned me about what? Jacob's voice remained calm. That silence does not mean weakness. Mrs. Anderson scoffed. So your family is threatening us now? Jacob shook his head. No threats. Only truth. He turned to Lydia. Are you safe? Lydia hesitated. That hesitation was enough. Jacob's jaw tightened. Nelson raised his voice. This is my house. Jacob looked around. Then why does everyone here look afraid? Justina's name suddenly lit up on Nelson's phone. He ignored it. Jacob continued. Lydia did not tell you everything. She did not tell you about the years she trained. The discipline. The control. Mrs. Anderson laughed nervously. Are we supposed to be scared of a pregnant woman? Lydia spoke, her voice low but firm. Pregnancy does not erase skill, Jacob added, and it does not erase family. Nelson stepped back slightly. Jacob took another step forward. You humiliated my sister. You brought another woman into her home. You raised your hand. Nelson snapped. She should know her place. The room went still. Lydia's eyes darkened. Jacob closed his eyes briefly. That sentence, he said, ends today. Mrs. Anderson pointed at Lydia. If you were not pregnant, you would be gone already. Lydia took a slow breath. Then she moved. In one clean motion, she stepped past Jacob, reached Nelson, and placed her fingers lightly on his shoulder. Nelson froze. She leaned in close, her voice calm and clear. You keep forgetting something. He swallowed. What? I am pregnant, she said, not powerless. She tapped a nerve point gently. Nelson gasped and dropped to one knee. Mrs. Anderson screamed. Jacob caught Nelson before he fell fully. Lydia stepped back, breathing steadily. I warned you, she said. The front gate opened again. This time, more footsteps. Heavy ones. Men stepped into the compound. Nelson looked up, panic in his eyes. Who are they? Mrs. Anderson whispered. Jacob answered quietly, family. And Lydia realized this house was no longer under Nelson's control. Not anymore. The men who entered the compound did not shout. They did not rush. They stood still, calm, alert, watching everything. Nelson felt something he had not felt in years. Fear. Mrs. Anderson clutched her handbag tightly. Jacob. What is this? Jacob answered without raising his voice. Protection. Nelson struggled to stand. His legs were weak. You think you can surround my house and scare me? Jacob looked at him. This house stopped being safe the day you raised your hand. Lydia stood quietly, one hand on her belly. She felt the baby move. She smiled gently. That small movement gave her strength. Nelson pointed at the men. Get them out. Now. No one moved. Mrs. Anderson whispered. Nelson, calm down. Nelson turned on her. You told me she was weak. Mrs. Anderson stepped back, shocked. Lydia finally spoke again. Every insult you threw at me, she said. I carried it quietly. Every weekend you brought that woman here. I stayed silent. I stayed because I believed patience was strength. She took one step forward. But patience has a limit. Justina suddenly appeared at the doorway. No one had heard her enter. Her eyes were red. Her voice shook. Nelson, I just wanted to collect my bag. Everyone turned. Nelson stared at her like she was a stranger. Get out, he snapped. Justina froze. You said you loved me. Lydia looked at Justina calmly. You were never loved. You were used. Justina's lips trembled. I did not know she was like this. Lydia answered. You did not want to know. Jacob gestured quietly, and one of the men opened the door wider. Justina walked out slowly, her head down. The house felt lighter when she left. Nelson laughed suddenly, sharp and bitter. So what now? You beat me and bring soldiers into my house? Lydia shook her head. No. She looked straight at him. Now, you listen. She walked closer, stopping just a few steps away. I am not here to destroy you, she said. I am here to protect myself and my child. Nelson's voice cracked. You think I will let you take my child away? Jacob stepped forward. You will not threaten her again. Mrs. Anderson found her voice. This marriage is finished. Lydia turned to her slowly. It was finished the first time he hit me. Silence fell. Nelson opened his mouth, then closed it again. For the first time, he had nothing to say. Lydia took a deep breath. I am leaving this house, she said. Not because you asked, but because I choose peace. She looked around the living room one last time. This place holds too much pain. Jacob nodded. Everything is ready. Nelson's eyes widened. Ready for what? Lydia met his gaze. For the next chapter, she turned toward the door, walking slowly, carefully. Just before she stepped out, she stopped and looked back. One more thing, Nelson, she said. You humiliated me in front of your mistress. She paused. But you still do not know who you married. She stepped out into the bright Lagos morning. The door closed behind her. Nelson stood frozen in the middle of the room, surrounded by silence, shame, and questions. And for the first time in his life, he realized he had lost control. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? Do well to let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories. Stay blessed.